Most junglers just run around the map, flipping plays and praying they work. But there's one simple concept that you can apply to your games to easily beat them all: jungling in rounds. Once you identify which lane is your win condition, you want to identify your weak side and strong side camps. Your weak side is the quadrant opposite your win condition, and your strong side is the quadrant near your win condition. A new round starts when we recall and head to our weak side to clear our camps. We almost never want to skip these camps unless we're 100% sure that we'll get a kill and we're confident our win condition won't get punished for us using our tempo elsewhere. This means that 95% of the time, you're just going to clear all of your weak side camps first, then go to your strong side. And then as you clear your strong side, keep an eye out for opportunities. If you see a gank opportunity that you think has above an 80% chance of turning into a kill, cut your clear and go to the gank. But if you don't see any opportunities, or you're not too confident that going for the gank will get you a kill, just finish clearing your camps. Then, when you finish clearing your camps, you have until your weak side camps respawn to do whatever you want. This is when we can go for slightly lower percentage ganks, because if it doesn't turn into a kill, we aren't losing gold and XP by wasting time we could have been using to clear our camps. It's very important to develop self-control around what ganks you go for. If you skip camps to gank and get nothing, while the enemy jungler just clears their camps, you're setting yourself way behind in gold and XP. You have to recognize that time is your most valuable asset as a jungler, and you want to avoid wasting time wherever possible. It's okay for plays to not work sometimes, but if you're consistently going for unsuccessful ganks, you must redefine what you consider to be a good gank opportunity. So naturally, let's discuss what the ganking conditionals are. 1. Is the enemy laner in a vulnerable position? For this conditional to be satisfied, the enemy laner must either be low on health or have a wave state that forces them to walk up past the middle point in the lane to hit the minions. 2. Do they have their summoners? If you skip a camp to gank and all you get is a flash, you've put yourself in a worse spot than if you just finished clearing your camps then went for the gank. Forcing enemies to use their summoners is very valuable, but you want to avoid doing so at the cost of your gold and XP income, with the recognition that the gank is only valuable to you and your team if you return to the lane to punish the laner for their lack of flash. 3. Do we have enough CC to reliably kill them? If the enemies are low health and have a vulnerable wave state, but you and your allies have no CC, you need to consider whether or not the enemies will just be able to walk away from the gank. Once again, you never want to skip camps for a gank if you're not at least 80% sure that you'll find a kill. 4. Do the enemies have wards placed? Even if the enemy laners are in a vulnerable position, if they see you coming, they can easily escape. That doesn't mean to never gank a lane if they have any wards, but it does mean to watch when and where the enemies ward and try to avoid the vision as you gank. Enemy laners that have wards will often play more aggressively and confidently, so if you identify a way to slip past the enemy vision line, their false sense of security can make them a super easy kill. The final consideration for when to gank is if the enemy jungler is nearby to counter gank. If both junglers are playing for the same lane, it can be dangerous to force plays. If you want to gank bot lane, but you know the enemy jungler is nearby and your bot lane is losing, taking the 3v3 is super risky. And we always want to avoid taking risky plays that can potentially blow up the game and give big leads to the enemy team. Therefore, if you don't feel confident that you still win the fight if the enemy jungler shows up, don't go for the gank. Make sure your teammates know that the enemy jungler is nearby and protect them if needed. But if you're confident that you can still win the fight even if the enemy jungler shows up, you should still go for the gank. Jungling is all about optimizing your time to get you and your laners the most value possible. Each jungle camp is worth about 100 gold, which means one of your jungle quadrants is worth around 300 gold, around equivalent to a kill. But camps also give you a lot of XP, so one quadrant is probably worth slightly more than one kill. If you go for a bot lane gank while your topside camps are up, and you get a kill for your ADC, but the enemy jungler invades all 3 of your topside camps, you've lost money on the play. You'll be down both gold and XP on the enemy jungler, making all future plays more difficult. And this is why it's so important to avoid going for lower percentage ganks, because the moment you put yourself behind the enemy jungler, the entire game becomes 10 times harder. Any play that you both participate in becomes harder. It becomes much more dangerous to go for ganks, contest objectives, and go for counter ganks. Especially if your laners are behind, if you take risky plays and fall behind yourself as well, the game becomes extremely hard to win. Therefore, avoiding unnecessary risks becomes vitally important. To articulate this from a laner's perspective, you don't want to drop waves to coin flip side lane roams all the time. If you decide to roam and get nothing while the enemy laner crashes a wave and takes a plate, you've just swung your lane by 200 to 300 gold to get nothing. Just like if you'd skipped camps to go for an unsuccessful gank. The classification of farming versus ganking junglers is like a little bit misleading. Yes, there are different types of junglers that excel at different things, but even ganking junglers will still spend the majority of the game farming. And the same goes for farming junglers. Maybe your champion's clear is super fast and you can get a reliable lead just by full clearing faster. But if you full clear and ignore good gank opportunities to farm, you're not actually doing yourself any favors. You can always clear your camps after the gank, but gank opportunities are always temporary, so you can't always clear your camps and still capitalize on the gank opportunity. With all we've discussed in this video, you might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed, and that's okay. Understanding when a gank opportunity is good enough to go for is one of the main things that separates good junglers from bad junglers. Good junglers will patiently wait for a good opportunity to go for a play, and are content to clear and protect their lanes until they see that opportunity, while bad junglers will waste tons of time going for ganks and plays that don't actually net them any benefit. But if you notice that you go for a lot of unsuccessful ganks, look back at the checklist we've discussed here and ask yourself what makes those ganks bad opportunities. Perhaps your team was too low to go for the gank, or perhaps your team didn't have enough CC to confirm the kills. This is where VOD reviewing becomes incredibly useful. Looking back at your games outside of the emotion of the moment and critiquing your play is very useful for building an understanding of when to go for opportunities and when to be patient. The way to get high elo is not by playing 10,000 games. It's getting as much learning value as possible from every single game you play. If you liked this video, check out this one about 12 overpowered tips you can use to improve your jungling. See you next time.